Good afternoon, folks. Welcome to the Philosophy for Philistines channel on March the 5th. I published a vlog a few days ago on the evil triumvirate of mental pathogens and why I'm my own worst enemy. And I wanted to develop some ideas around the final evil within the triumvirate. I'll reread them to you just so we're all on the same page. Being deceitful corrupts reality itself by deconstructing it. Being resentful projects the attitude that everything and everyone can go to hell because the universe is futile. And finally, arrogance is a way of saying I already know all the things I need to know, and you're not about to teach me anything. Today I'm going to focus on the last evil in that triumvirate of self-destructive mental pathogens. In that vein, I highly recommend a book that I read back when I was in Norway in 2013 or 14, entitled Manipulism and the Weapon of Guilt, Collectivism Exposed, by my friend Mikkel Clare Nielsen, who is a Dane living in exile, although presently I believe he's back in Denmark. It is a book that goes into great depths of the pathological narcissism associated with social collectivism. I've posted the link to that below. You can download it without cost. And it was the book that literally changed my life. So, I was watching the tube this morning, and Lord Sumption was interviewed. He is a senior jurist in Britain, now retired. This is what he had to say. Mass civil disobedience has begun. He predicts the civil disobedience over lockdowns is inevitable, and I quote, "Sometimes the most public-spirited thing you can do with despotic laws is to ignore them. Why? Because public sentiment and public fear pose an inherent risk to liberty. The greatest risk is the cultural loss of a societal sense of that liberty. So when the government successfully takes away our liberty and it becomes viewed as being acceptable, it's very, very difficult to reacquire a sense of public duty and public liberty that existed prior to it being taken away. Posted a link to that video below. It is a fascinating interview with Lord Sumption and a must listen. So I have a few thoughts regarding that. First of all, any government which treats its citizens as though they were simply tools of a national state policy ought to be brought down by any means necessary because they have become illegal and unconstitutional. This Hegelian nightmare becomes inevitable when maintaining liberty is no longer the primary goal and function of a serving government. Aristotle warned that democracies are fragile because the populace are a sucker for a demagogue who will turn himself into an absolute ruler. His prediction is being fulfilled as we witness the collapse of liberty all throughout the Western world after this horrendous year of lockdowns and destruction of Western economy, but most of all, most fundamentally, an attack on our civil liberties. The populace in many nations have been more than willing to exchange liberty for safety, while trading an elected class who will defend their liberty for an elected elite who are robbing us of freedom. The populace's lack of concern is merely evidence of how poor our system of education has become. To be as pathetically unaware of the great philosophers whose ideas created Western culture is an unforgivable sin. It's interesting to note that these same social collectivists that are always lauding the merits of our First Nation culture, which I also honor. I was adopted by the Anishinaabes of Cape Croker and named by the grannies. And it was an honor and a privilege to learn something of our First Nations heritage. But this is what the social consensus forgets. In First Nations culture, to disrespect the elder is one of the most fundamental sins. In the Anishinaabe culture, when you sit around the sacred fire, first of all, the man has to light the fire, because men represent fire and women represent water. So a man must build the fire. Can't be in a pit that's ever been used to cook food in. The stones have to be all granite, because they believe the spirit of the ancestors resides in those stones. And they begin by praying. Miigwech Mishomas, the ancestors. Miigwech Makwa, the spirit of motherhood, which is represented by the bear, which is what Makwa means. And Miigwech Manitou, the great spirit or God. So those three things are thanked. Fundamentally, the foundation of their culture is a respect for the past and the wisdom of the elders and the importance of motherhood to guide and protect the rearing and raising of children. When you forget these things and you claim that the nuclear family has no value, you are literally deconstructing civilization. The populace's lack of concern is merely evidence of how poor our system of education has become. To be as pathetically unaware of the great philosophers whose ideas created Western culture is an unforgivable sin, then. The responsibility for that falls on each of us, since the academy could not have become postmodern neo-Marxist indoctrination centers had we not allowed it and funded the own destruction of our own ethical, epistemological foundations, along with our cultural ethos. It is metaphorically as idiotic as paying someone to dig away your foundation to collapse your own house around your ears. Once the societal ethos of liberty is lost, recovery will virtually be impossible. This is what Lord Sumption warned about. There is no such thing as new normal. If our societal ethos no longer reflects the values which built our civilization, then they are the very opposite of being normal. We must rediscover the past in order to revivify it. For it is there that the foundations for pursuing a path of freedom and civil liberty for all lie. And that is absolutely fundamental. We inherited this system from our ancestors. And metaphorically, it's dead. Why? Because the people that create it are no longer alive. So it is up to us to revivify it and to improve upon it and hand that inheritance down to our children. It is our most precious gift from our ancestors. They had wisdom, and we need to discover the wisdom that they had and add to it, not tear everything down, as the postmodern left and cancel culture is so wont to do. Here's some things to think and pray about on this Friday afternoon. I wish you all a great weekend. Guhel to Allah. God bless you, and we'll see you for the Sunday sermon right here at the Philosophy for Philistines channel, where I'll never pass the offering plate or ask you for money.